Hello and welcome. Today we'll be practicing a 10-minute hip mobility routine. So if you're looking to feel less stiff when you first get up in the morning, or if you feel really tight after a long day of sitting at a desk or driving, maybe you're a runner and you want to enhance your performance, or if you just want to get deeper into your squats, you can certainly benefit from this hip mobility routine. We'll be going through 6 different movements that involve internally as well as externally rotating the hips. Let's begin by warming up with 90-degree turns, supporting with the arms as we navigate from the right side to the left side. The goal is to move as smoothly as possible. If this is too much, it's okay if the feet need to touch the floor. Feel free to take the option of moving to the next level by removing the hands off of the floor. This involves a little bit more core and hip flexor strength. Stay nice and lifted through the chest. Try to keep the knees bent at a 90-degree angle. Now the option to progress to level 3 by raising up onto the knees into a kneeling upright position. If your knees are pretty sensitive, just stay with level 2 or fold a blanket or mat under the knees. And last one. Come back to center. Hopefully the hips are starting to feel a bit warmer. Next, we'll come on to the hands and knees for some hip circles, aligning shoulders over wrist and hips over knees. Bend the left knee, beginning with inward hip rotations. Draw big circles with the knee, even though the movement is generating from that ball and socket joint of the hip. Now reverse the direction of the circle. We'll put our brains to work here a little bit, moving through the largest range of motion as possible, yet still maintaining that stability through the pelvis and stay lifted through the arms. Let's repeat that on the other side, beginning with the inward rotation. Allow the circle to glide through the hip, slow and controlled, finding that fluidity in the hip, and reverse the direction. Maybe noticing how one hip is slightly tighter than the other hip, which is quite common. Release the knees and have a seat. Coming into a kneeling upright position for our next movement, lean backs. If your knees are sensitive, you might be more comfortable doubling up the mat. Kneeling upright with the feet flexed. Inhale, reaching overhead. Exhale, leaning back, keeping the pelvis tucked to maintain a neutral spine throughout the flow. Inhale, lifting onto the knees, reaching the arms overhead. Exhale on the lean back. Inhale, reach up, and exhale, bring the hips back to the heels. Slow, controlled movements as you try to lean back further with each repetition. Now we'll place the tops of the feet into the mat rather than keeping the feet flexed. Once again, kneeling upright. Inhale, reach overhead. Exhale on the lean back, keeping a straight line from shoulders to knees. Exhale, leaning back. Press the tops of the feet into the mat for more leverage to lean back. Can you lower all the way down to the heels? This stretch can be a little bit uncomfortable, so take your time and be patient with yourself. Okay, let's take a break from being on our knees. Prop up to a seated position using the arms. Bend the knees, keeping the feet wide. Treat your hips to some nice dynamic windshield wipers. Lower all the way down onto your back, keeping the knees bent. Feet slightly wider than your yoga mat. Come back to that fluid windshield wiper motion, internally rotating the hips as we alternate dropping the knees inward. Now keep the left knee dropped inward and settle the right foot on top of that left leg. Reach the left arm way back behind the head finding length through that whole left side of the body and into the front of the left hip. If this stretch is a bit too intense, just uncross that right foot. Bring the left arm back in, uncross the right leg, and come back to a few windshield wipers. This time keeping the right knee dropped inward, and settle the left foot on top of the right leg. Reaching the right arm straight back. Now finding length down the whole right side of the body. Release the right arm back in. Uncross and give both knees a hug. Rock up to a seated position. Let's come back up onto the knees one more for our hip lunges. Bring the left foot forward, then open it to the side, forming a right angle with the thighs. Place the hands on the hips to direct both hips forward, inviting some mobility by dropping into that left knee, carefully allowing the left knee to go slightly beyond the ankle. Option to stay here if this is enough of a stretch. Otherwise, fully extend the left leg and walk the hands forward into a tabletop. Now lowering onto the elbows for a more intense stretch. Walk the elbows off to the left, creating a pretty deep stretch in the left inner thigh, groin area. And then walk the elbows back to center. Return back onto the hands. Swing that left leg back in. Take a breather and return back up to the kneeling position. Swing the right leg around to a low lunge. Open that right leg pointing to the right. Hands on the hips to direct the hips forward, gently dropping into that right knee. Whatever range of motion works for you. One side might feel slightly tighter than the other. Option to extend that right leg. Walk the hands forward. Option to lower to the elbows or to walk the elbows off to the right, intensifying that stretch into the right inner thigh, groin area. Breathing into the stretch. Coming back up onto the hands. Swing the right leg back around and have a seat. Lastly, we'll be exploring a new option for pigeon pose by placing the legs up the wall with the hips about 8 to 10 inches from the wall. We'll do a few variations of this pose, so take whatever works best for you today. First, we'll hug the right knee in toward the chest, and then settle the right foot on top of the left thigh, creating a number 4 with your legs, targeting the stretch into the right hip area. To deepen this sensation, slide the left foot down the wall, creating a bend in the left knee, gently directing the right knee forward. Take this as far as you feel comfortable with. For an even deeper stretch, press onto the ball of the left foot, raising the left heel away from the wall. Directing the breath to any areas that might be resisting the stretch. Gently start easing out of the pose, extending the legs, and this time giving the left thigh a hug toward the chest. Settling the left foot on top of the right thigh. Notice one side might be slightly tighter than the other. That's pretty normal. Gently direct the left knee forward, and for a deeper stretch, start sliding that right foot down the wall, bending into the right knee. Option to push the ball of the foot further into the wall, raising the heel off the wall for a more intense stretch. Gently easing out of the stretch, giving both knees a hug, and then turning on to one side before pressing up to a seated position. I hope you found these hip exercises and stretches to be helpful and effective, yet simple enough to practice on your own. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. It would be great if you could like, share, and comment on the video.